what we've got planned for you is a brief talk from me. So I'll talk to you a little bit about what the BSc and MSci programs are like and what it's like to study at UCL. And then you'll have an opportunity to ask me questions, and you'll also have the opportunity to talk to our student volunteers. Speaking of which, why don't you introduce yourselves, guys? Why don't we start with Yihei?
Hello everyone, my name is Yu Yu and I'm currently a first year undergrad student.
Very good. Natalia, do you want to start off the second year introductions?
Hello, my name's Natalia and I'm a second year neuroscience student.
Hi everyone, I'm Priscilla and I'm a second year neuroscience student as well.
And we have a couple of fourth years with us. Yasir, why don't you go first?
Hi everyone, I'm Yusur and I'm a fourth year neuroscience student.
Hi everyone, my name is Lenny. I'm a fourth year neuroscience student.
Brilliant. Okay. So in that case, I'll line up my presentation and let me see. How's that? Can everyone see okay?
Yep,
Give
that
me
looks
a
good.
thumbs up. Okay,
Yep,
brilliant.
looks good.
Thanks very much. Okay. We've still got people popping in all the time, but I think I'll just start going anyway, and hopefully anyone who's missed the beginning can kind of catch up. So for those of you who didn't hear the preamble, I'm Dr. Daniel Ward. I'm the admissions tutor for the Neuroscience BSc and MSci, and I'm going to give you a brief talk about what it's like to study neuroscience at UCL. Now, deciding which university to study at and indeed what to study are two of the biggest decisions you'll make in your life, really, and they'll have a huge impact not just on your career, but on your whole life in general. So I think it's very important that you take this decision very seriously and that you get it right. With that in mind, I would encourage you, if you're able, to try to attend one of our in-person open days because while I'll do my best to convey what it's like to study at UCL to you, obviously there are things that you can only get from experiencing a place and an environment in person. So if you get the chance, come and have a look. You'll also get the chance to kind of do some experiments and things and get a feel for what it's like to do practicals, things that we can't unfortunately offer in the online open day. So yeah, do try to come if you can. But if not, I'll do my best. And here we go. So why might you want to come and study neuroscience at UCL? Well, one key reason is that UCL is part, well, the center really, of the largest research community in Europe. Between us and our partner institutes, there are some 450 senior investigators. So these are lab heads with their own lab space, expensive, fancy, high-tech equipment, team of trained researchers working that equipment, each answering an individual kind of novel scientific question. So each trying to kind of push back the boundaries of what we understand. And when you come and study at UCL, you're not just sitting in a few lectures, not just studying for a degree, but you're really becoming part of that wider research community. You're embedding yourself within something much broader, which should help you to grow as a neuroscientist, hopefully. But it's not just the volume of research that we do that's really impressive, it's also the quality. So according to the most recent Research Excellence Framework survey, which is basically a review of the research going on at all the universities across the UK, UCL was rated as #1 in research power for psychology, psychiatry, and neuroscience, right? So top quality research and vast amounts of it. If you come and study with us, you'll be part of the UCL Faculty of Life Sciences, right? And this faculty has a really impressive history of making great discoveries within neuroscience, physiology, and pharmacology. Indeed, we have a fairly impressive list of Nobel Prize winners among our former members. These include Andrew Huxley, who discovered the molecular basis of the action potential, Bernard Katz, who studied synapses, the connections that neurons make with other cells, including other neurons, the physiologist A.V. Hill, the pharmacologist James Black, and more recently, the 2014 Nobel Prize winner for physiology and medicine, Professor John O'Keefe, who was responsible really for discovering the brain's GPS system, in a manner of speaking. So he made electrophysiological recordings from the brains of rats while they ran around in a maze. And he found that in a region called the hippocampus, there were certain cells that would fire, would be active when the rat was in a particular location in the maze. And he discovered that from that activity, the animal could basically work out where it was in space. And we have a kind of relatively similar system in our own brains. But it's not just our research which is cutting edge, which is phenomenal. Our teaching's pretty good too. Indeed, according to US News Global Rankings 2024, we are number 6 in the world and number 1 in the UK and Europe for neuroscience and behavior. In addition to this, according to the Times and Sunday Times Good University Guide 2024, we were University of the Year. So hopefully I've conveyed that UCL is a pretty good place to come and study neuroscience. But is neuroscience right for you? What is neuroscience? Well, as neuroscientists, we try to look at the brain from a biological perspective. We investigate the workings of genes, brain cells, synapses, and circuits, and see how they give rise to much more complex functions like consciousness, emotion, behavior, and so forth. We also study what happens when the brain malfunctions and try to work towards treatments for horrible neurological and psychiatric disorders. It's also important to understand what neuroscience is not. Neuroscience is distinct from neurology and also from psychology. Neurology is a branch of medicine, so neurologists will typically work with patients and spend most of their time in hospitals or associated arenas. Neuroscientists don't typically work with patients. They might, but if they do so, it will be to study them effectively rather than to treat them. Neuroscientists may develop treatments for diseases, they may study diseases, but they won't typically deliver therapy, right? This would be the job of a neurologist. The distinction between neuroscience and psychology is in some regards even more subtle. Both neuroscientists and psychologists study the brain, but neuroscientists typically look at it from a bottom-up perspective, trying to understand, as I said, how cells and circuits give rise to more complex functions. Psychologists tend to take a top-down perspective. They tend to study things like behavior and try to infer and deduce models of function from the observations they make. In truth, the barrier between psychology and neuroscience is becoming ever more flimsy due to advances in neuroscience. We've now got ways of very precisely controlling the activity of cells and circuits using light. So we can effectively switch on specific cells and circuits that we're interested in and understand how these cells and circuits contribute to things like behavior. So to give you an example, there are a group of cells in a region known as the hypothalamus. I'll try to find a little pointer so I can point it out here. So it's around here. So there are a group of cells in the region called the hypothalamus called ESR1 cells, which play a crucial role in regulating maternal behavior. So it's been shown that in mice, if you take young mothers who will typically take great care of their pups, as you would imagine, and you shut down the activity of these ESR1 cells, then these mice will stop parenting their own offspring, right? They'll effectively abandon their pups. By contrast, if you take virgin female mice and activate these cells, then the virgin female mice who would typically have no interest in doing maternal things will start to suddenly look after the pups as if they're their mothers. So I think it's pretty incredible to show that you can control something as profound as maternal love simply by switching on and off a few cells. And these are the kinds of things we're interested in neuroscience, really. Here are some of the other things you might study if you come and study with us at UCL. For example, how a few early embryonic stem cells can give rise to the incredible complexity of a fully developed human brain containing some 100 billion neurons in a kind of incredibly elaborate and precise architecture. incredible to think that they arise from kind of such simple origins. You'll learn about how the brain learns and forms memories. You'll learn about how drugs act on the brain. Indeed, I do a bit of teaching on this myself. You'll learn about how brain cells can shape activity and behavior, and how your senses allow you to perceive the world, how the brain controls movement, how molecular switches can turn on and off brain regions controlling things like fear, hunger, sleep. You'll learn how computational models can help us to understand how the brain works at a range of different levels. And of course, you'll study how changes in molecules and cells can lead to devastating nervous system diseases. If you come and study with us, you'll spend most of your time here in the Department of Neuroscience, Physiology, and Pharmacology. However, you'll also spend time in our sister departments of cell and developmental biology and structural and molecular biology, potentially also psychology, depending on the modules you select. In addition to this, many of our students spend time at our partner institutes, including the Institute of Neurology, Cognitive Neuroscience, Ophthalmology, and Child Health, the Sainsbury's Wellcome Centre for Circuits and Behaviour, where Professor John O'Keefe currently is, the Gatsby Computational Neuroscience Unit, and the Francis Crick Institute. So these are cutting-edge research facilities, and many of our students during the course of their degrees will either visit these institutes as part of their standard education. They may visit them for summer placements. So these are kind of training placements that many students undertake in between their study periods. And many of our students also visit these institutes for their final year projects. So when they undertake this large final year dissertation research project, rather than spend their time in UCL, many of the students choose instead to go to one of these cool cutting edge research facilities. And I'll talk a lot more about these final year projects later. But first, let's talk a little bit about how we teach in the neuroscience program at UCL. So a lot of your teaching will take place in large lecture theatres. So you'll, instead of being sitting in a relatively small classroom, which is probably what you're used to, spend a lot of time in a very large hall, potentially with tens or even hundreds of other students, with a lecturer at the front explaining some kind of relatively arcane concept to you. That said, we do have lots of teaching sessions in small groups as well. Things like tutorials or lab practicals, necessarily need to take place with smaller numbers of students. In terms of who's delivering the teaching, the vast majority of your teaching will come from lecturers. Many of the lecturers you may not get to know very well. A lot of lecturers might only give you one lecture during your entire degree when they come in, talk about their particular specialist subject, and that will be all that you see of them. There will, however, be several lecturers with whom you develop a much closer relationship, in particular your personal tutors, who will act as a kind of guide for you throughout your time at university. The way you study at university is also different, probably, to what you're used to. Of course, a lot of your learning is supervised, particularly when you're in the labs. You'll need to be quite closely supervised, especially at the beginning of your degree. However, you'll also need to do a lot of proactive independent study. So often you'll be given a task, perhaps to study a particular area of neuroscience. You'll be asked maybe to write an essay on it, and then you'll be graded and given feedback based on what you produce. So you have to be a lot more independent at university, fundamentally, relative to what you're used to perhaps in college. In terms of where your education takes place, much of it will take place in a classroom-like environment. As I said, either lecture theatres or kind of smaller tutorial areas. However, you'll also be spending a very large amount of time in the lab. Really, from your first year, you'll be spending time in the lab. And as you progress through your degree, that amount of time will increase and increase until in your final year, you're probably spending the vast majority of your time in the lab. So I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about how the degree programs are structured. I would add the caveat that this is currently under review, so we're always looking to make changes to and improve our offering. So there is a potential that things will change by the time you come to study at UCL, if that's what you choose to do. But this should give you a nice general overview of what the neuroscience degree programs are like. So the first thing to mention is that study in UCL is divided into credits. Okay, so each year you will study 120 credits, and each credit equates to about 10 hours of study. Credits are clustered into modules. So a module will define a particular topic area, a particular subject or focus of study. Most modules are worth 15 credits. Some modules are worth more, 30 or 45 credits, typically multiples of 15. In the first year at UCL, UCL offers a very large amount of pure neuroscience focused modules. So there are two specific neuroscience modules, Introduction to Neuroscience, which is a 15 credit module, which effectively trains you how to be a neuroscientist. It teaches you how to think like a neuroscientist, how to analyze the literature, trains you in some lab skills and so forth. All of the kind of fundamental skills that are core to being a really good neuroscientist. The other neuroscience module is a 30 credit module, so a larger module, some 300 hours of study. This is Foundations of Neurobiology. This is effectively an overview of all the different sub-disciplines within neuroscience. So, for example, neuropharmacology or developmental neurobiology and so forth. In addition to this, there are several modules which train you up in skills that you'll need in order to be a competent and capable neuroscientist. Things like biochemistry and molecular biology, an understanding of cells and developments, mammalian physiology, genetics, and chemistry. So these are all more general life science area skills, but they're certainly things that you'll need in order to develop into a competent neuroscientist. As you move into the second year, things become increasingly focused on neuroscience, and the amount of lab time you have is increased. In the second year, you'll take between 75 and 90 credits of core modules, including human neuroanatomy, cellular neurophysiology, so basically understanding how brain cells work, essential molecular biology, again, molecular biology is so key to neuroscience, and molecular biology for neuroscientists, which is a practical module. So you'll spend almost the entirety of this module in the lab. You can also take either a short or a longer pharmacology course. In addition to this, you will take either one or two optional modules. Here are a subset of the optional modules. There are more than this to choose from, but here are some of the key ones. Developmental neurobiology, systems neuroscience, which explains how different brain regions work together to give rise to particular functions. This is something I contribute to. Integrative cell biology, perception, mathematics for science. And on top of this, you can also pick an elective module. So this is basically a free choice. So many of our students pick something neuroscience related, but equally you could do something a little more left field. For example, you could do a history module, a philosophy module, or a language module. And often studying something a little bit removed from your key focus of study can bring with it benefits or new ways of looking at neuroscience. So you're encouraged really to do something a little different if that's what you want to do. In the third year, the BSc and MSci neuroscience programs diverge. So the BSc students will undertake a 45 credit lab-based project. So this is around 450 credits of lab-focused research. So you will undertake a unique and independent cutting-edge research project trying to address a question which has not been answered, to push back the boundaries of our understanding fundamentally. While the MSci students will undertake a 30 credit literature project. So this is a deep dive into the literature surrounding a particular scientific question in order to produce an article, a kind of extended essay, which really addresses that question based on effectively all the knowledge we have available to us. On top of this, there will be 45 credits of core options to select from. So these are neuroscience focused modules, including things like the cellular basis of brain function, neuropharmacology, neurobiology of brain injury and disease. There's a huge array. And you will also take optional modules to the value of 15 or 30 credits. And again, we have a huge range of great specialist optional modules, including things like cellular developmental neurobiology, pain, psychopharmacology, and so on. And we're really able to offer such a huge array of specialist modules because, as I mentioned earlier, UCL is part of this very broad research community. So we have all of these experts in and around UCL, and many of them are willing to offer a module based on their own specialist area of research. So no matter what you're interested in, you can probably find a specialist neuroscience module which will suit your tastes. The fourth year is for the MSci students only. So the MSci students will undertake an extended experimental project worth between 60 and 90 credits. So they're spending half to 3/4 of their year, effectively, of their academic year in the lab, right, undertaking a cutting edge novel research project. And I'll talk to you a little more about these research projects shortly. In addition to this research project, they can undertake 30 to 60 credits of specialist master's level modules. And again, we have a huge array of specialist modules from which you can choose. As I said, we can offer these because we have this huge well of expertise that UCL can draw from. Okay, so a little bit about the final year projects. As I mentioned, the BSc students undertake a 45 credit project in their final year, while the MSci students take a 60 to 90 credit research project in their final year. So they're spending between about a third and about 3/4 of their final year within the lab. And this is lab-based original research. You get to choose your supervisor, you can choose the project, and you can even contribute to the design of that project. So if there's a particular research area which you're fascinated by, you can perhaps help steer things towards that research area. You'll be working in a lab with cutting-edge equipment alongside full-time research staff. So expert scientists will be training you in what you're doing. And when you complete, your project will be examined by a written report and an oral examination. And this really gives you a strong taste of what it's like to be a researcher. You get to know what it's like to work in a lab, to work on your own research project. And many of our students actually manage to make really fantastic achievements during their research project. In fact, a great number of our students actually manage to publish scientific papers based on their undergraduate research, which I think is really fantastic and commendable. You know, our students are really genuinely contributing to the field of neuroscience. And I would remind you that you don't have to take your final year project within UCL. You can also go to one of our partner institutes. Indeed, we have many students going to the Institute of Neurology, the Sainsbury Wellcome Centre, and so forth. Perhaps now would be a useful time to maybe hear from some of the students who are actually undertaking research projects currently. Yes, sir. Why don't you talk to us briefly about your research project?
Yes, of course. So I'm currently doing my fourth year research project in the Sainsbury's Wellcome Centre, which is where John O'Keefe is. I've always been interested in cognitive and behavioral neuroscience. So currently my project is around spatial memory, and I've pretty much spent every day this past year in the lab. I get to work with rats. I kind of train them on the maze and eventually implant them and do electrophysiological recordings. It's been a very interesting experience. It's my first time in like an actual lab environment, and it really taught me so much about how research works. I get to work with, top researchers. I get to work as part of a team, so you're not alone in it. You're not just thrown into it. They really like teach you and show you lots of things. Yeah.
Thanks very much, sir. Lani, maybe you could talk a little bit about your project as well.
Yes, I'm also a fourth year neuroscience student. I'm currently taking the 90 credit research project in the Institute of Neurology and the Institute of Ophthalmology. I almost spent most of my time in the lab this year. my project is about visual and computational neuroscience. So in my project, I don't deal with mice, but I work mainly on coding and programming. My project is about use a computational model to decode what does a mouse see.
Yeah, that's really cool. So effectively, you've got data. People have shown mice videos, and you're using algorithms to work out what they've seen. So basically, reading the brain like it's a book in a way.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff. Okay, so we we appreciate that not all of our students will want to pursue a career in research, however. Fortuitously, our degree program trains students in a whole range of really valuable skills, which are highly sought after by any employer, really. Things like problem solving, data literacy, critical thinking, teamwork skills, time management and organization, written and verbal communication skills, as well as professionalism and work ethics. And as I say, consequently, our students are very highly sought after by top employers. And this is reflected in data from our graduate surveys. So here we have the destinations for BSc students from a very large survey that was taken of students 1.5 years after leaving UCL, I should say. And we find that around a third of our BSc students actually go on to an MSc or an MA, so a master's degree of another type. So this is typically students who studied an undergraduate in neuroscience and decided that they'd actually like to diverge into a slightly different field, something like clinical psychology or bioinformatics or something like that. We have a number of our students going on to a second degree, typically medicine. So some of our students decide that they would in fact actually quite like to be neurologists and respecialize accordingly. Impressively, a good number of our BSc students actually go straight on to PhD or MRes programs. So this is what you need to study in order to become a doctor of neuroscience like myself. And these are incredibly competitive programs. Usually you would need an MSc or above in order to get onto these programs, but we actually have a good number of our BSc students going straight onto PhD or MRes programs, which I think is something to be proud of. In addition to this, we have a number of our students going into things like consulting, data science, teaching. Some of them go into science or technical roles like they're lab technicians or research assistants or such forth. And a number go for the money and go into things like finance and accountancy, which is quite understandable. If you look at the graduate destinations for our MSci students, however, a whopping 32% of them go on to PhD or MRes programs. So this is really impressive. These are super, super competitive programs. And many of our students are going on to PhDs at some of the very best institutes and universities. So places like UCL, Imperial, King's College, Oxford, Cambridge, the Max Planck Institutes. We have a very good number of students going to the very, very top neuroscience institutes in the world. A good number of our MSci students go straight into science jobs. So working, for example, like for companies, for example, like AstraZeneca. We have graduates going into marketing, advertising, science, communication. A small number of our MSci students go on to a second MSc or MA. Again, these are typically students who decide that maybe neuroscience is not quite right for them and they wish to diverge, go on a different path. Some go into things like consulting, teaching, or again, things like data science. What is interesting from our graduate survey, though, I think, is that many of the students that graduate from UCL decide to stay and work around London. And I think part of the reason for this is that London's a pretty incredible place. There's a lot going on here, and obviously that's, quite appealing to a lot of our students. So London is really chocked full of art, culture, music, great food. You can find really all of these things within a stone's throw of the UCL campus. And that's sort of something to think about when you're deciding which university to go to, whether London is a place you want to be. But it's not just London that offers a lot of social opportunities. UCL does as well. Indeed, UCL has a huge array of societies and clubs. There's pretty much a society and club for everything, and if there isn't a society or club for what you're interested in, then you can start one up. And UCL is quite generous in supporting the development of new clubs and societies. One society you might be interested in is the UCL Neuroscience Society, which runs loads of neuroscience-related events and activities. This is including things like social events for neuroscientists, talks from really interesting speakers, all kinds of events. We have Natalia, who's a member of UCL Neuroscience Society. Maybe she can talk to you a little bit about this later if there's time. So hopefully I've convinced you that UCL is a great place to come and study neuroscience. But what do you need in order to study neuroscience here? Well, we ask for 3 A's at A level. This must include chemistry and at least one from biology, mathematics, or physics. In addition, we need GCSEs in English language and mathematics of at least grade B or 6. We do offer a contextual offer. So this is a slightly lower offer for students from a slightly disadvantaged background, which is AAB, but we still require an A in chemistry and at least one other science, including biology, mathematics, or physics. And again, we still require mathematics and English language at grade B or 6. If you're an IB diploma student, then we require 38 points. Again, we have a contextual offer of 36, but in either case, we require 18 points in 3 high-level subjects, including chemistry, and again, 1 from biology, maths, or physics, with no high-level score below 5. So these are quite high grade requirements, but if you can meet these, if you're also an active inquirer and you're good at problem solving, and you're passionate about understanding how the brain works, then we would very much like you to come and join us. So please do. I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. Perhaps now I could open it up to the chat. Maybe I think Ian, you're going to kind of take charge of organizing this a bit, but if anyone has any questions, they can write them in the chat, or you can just shout them out, or you can put your hand up, whatever works for you. So yeah, please feel free to ask me or any of our student ambassadors anything you're interested in knowing. So we've gone a bit quiet. Society, while we wait.
Okay, we've got some starting to come through. So the first question, how important would you say that getting work experience is to applications?
To applications for university, I would say it's certainly beneficial. I think it really helps to demonstrate that you're enthusiastic, that you're really passionate about what you're doing, that you're willing to go the extra mile. However, we appreciate that not everyone will have opportunities to get placements. Say that the majority of our students probably don't necessarily have much experience. It can be very difficult to get lab experience at the level you're at. Certainly, if you want to go onto a career in neuroscience, if you want to do a PhD, then the more time you can spend in the lab, the better. And at UCL, we try to help you get as much experience as possible through your final year project and also through summer placements where they can be arranged. What is the English language requirement for the IB diploma students? So we have I think fixed English language requirements on our website. Ian, do you know what the English language requirements are set?
I'll drop a link to the prospectus page in the chat, which has got those requirements. So I'll reply to that one.
Okay, great, fair enough. Samuel asks, how important is the GCSE grade when considering applicants? For example, if a student got a grade 5 instead of a grade 6. Well, it's a requirement in terms of mathematics and English. So it is very important in terms of ensuring you have the kind of base level of mathematics or English that we require. If it's with regard to other subjects, so outside of mathematics and English, then it's not so important. We understand that sometimes students take a little while to find their academic feet, right? So we have some students who perhaps don't excel at GCSE, get to A level, and suddenly, they get a little bit passionate about what they're studying, and they start doing a lot better. I was like this myself. I didn't have particularly amazing GCSE results. When I got on to A level, I suddenly got very passionate about neuroscience, and here I am today as a doctor and a lecturer in neuroscience. Do you accept deferred placements if I were to take a gap year for work experience, volunteering, traveling? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you can take a gap year. That's no problem. That wouldn't bias us against you. Indeed, a gap year is a great way to gain experience. Sorry, Ian, I've kind of taken over the reading. You
That's
were
fine.
busy
Yeah.
Did you want to take over?
No,
I don't want to steal your job.
yeah, no, that's fine. You
Okay,
you
shall I
read if
just
you want
plow
to,
on? Okay.
and I'll answer in the chat where I can do.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
For your personal statement, how important are supracurricular activities, I guess? Well, having done extra stuff is obviously advantageous. It can show a particular passion or a useful level of experience in some area. But it's not the most crucial thing that we look for. I guess what we really want is we want to know that you understand what neuroscience is, and we want to see that you're passionate about neuroscience. So, for example, one way of demonstrating that might be to talk about books you've read, neuroscience books, things that go beyond your A-level studies or your IB studies or whatever qualification you're doing. Just something that really demonstrates that you've got the kind of passion for the subject that you'll need to do really well to thrive in this high intensity neuroscience environment. You didn't take biology A level, other sciences instead. Would that put you at a significant disadvantage for this degree? I would say not necessarily. I think biology is a very useful A level to have, but it's not one that we consider critical because you can catch up on biology to a certain extent, we think. I I have talked to students who've taken the degree without a background in biology, and they've said that they found it hard, but many of those students are doing very well. I think often it means that you might have a rather difficult first year as you try to catch up with any biology you've missed, but certainly it's not crucial. You can do very well without an A level in biology. What do you think, student ambassadors? Would you say that it's crucial, or what's your view?
I would say it's not crucial, but helpful because I didn't do A-level biology, and I can say that I'm not struggling too much with the degree. So it could be helpful, but not crucial. I did maths, chemistry, and psychology. Yeah.
Brilliant. So from the horse's mouth, then. Okay. Thanks very much, Priscilla. Great contribution. Thank you. Awe says, can I still apply if I got a 5 in English language, and this comes with some extenuating circumstances? Um, mm, I think generally we do require the 6. I think that the application would probably be automatically filtered. Uh, there are other English language qualifications that will allow you to meet our criteria, I believe. So if you look at the page that Ian posted on English language requirements, that should help clarify the issue. So even it could be that in spite of missing out on that grade, there's some other way for you to fulfill that requirement. Would an EPQ be beneficial? What is an EPQ? I'm coming across as very ignorant here. Do you know, Ian?
No idea, sorry.
So this is from Gail. Gail, could you let me know what an EPQ is? Ideally, just shout it out
I
if you've
think
got a
an
microphone.
EPQ, sorry, um,
Oh, it's okay. Go
so
ahead.
I think
Yeah.
an EPQ is like a project you do during your A-level years. So
Right, so
kind
this
of
is
like
like
a
an
research.
advanced investigative project. Okay, I've heard of something. I haven't heard of it called an EPQ before, which probably shows my ignorance. But obviously it would be beneficial. Yeah, I guess any relevant experience is in your favor, of course. But again, I would say that this isn't a requirement, right? And I think many of our students haven't done this. Do you guys have research projects that you undertook during your A levels or not? Okay, so some nodding heads and some shaking heads, so it's mixed. So certainly not critical, but of course advantageous. What is the difference between the neuroscience and human neuroscience program? Is the latter more suggested if I am more interested in cognitive neuroscience? I would say probably yes. I would say it probably leans more to cognitive neuroscience. I would say the human neuroscience program is probably pitched between our neuroscience degree and psychology. So it skews more towards psychology. There's much more top-down approach, I think, in the human neuroscience degree program. We're very interested in cells and circuits. We often use animal models to try to understand how the brain works so that then we can apply what we've learned to kind of more complex systems like humans. Because, you can't use invasive techniques to study humans, right? You can't get inside the brain and look at what the individual cells and circuits are doing because it's unethical. So psychology and human neuroscience, to an extent, will use non-invasive techniques like EEG and fMRI, which we also cover in our degree, but we don't tend to focus on these because they're quite gross in a way. You can't tell what individual cells are doing when you use techniques like this. You can only tell what large chunks are kind of generally doing uh, with that evolution. But if you're more interested in kind of general behavior and you like that kind of thing, then yeah, the is probably more. Um, so Tanuja asks, what is flexibility within the department to switch from the BSc course to the the year in industry course, she says, within the first and second year. So yes, I mean you can switch from the BSc to the MSci. Certainly, I'll just close my window a bit because I've got a bit of a glare. You can switch between the 3-year and the 4-year program, assuming that you fulfill the criteria for the 4-year program. So basically, you need to get at least 60% in your 3rd year in order to continue on to the 4th year. So there are certain grade-based requirements if you wish to stay on for the longer course. I would say, however, that we don't have a year in industry. That's not something we offer. I mean, you're very welcome to take a year out and go into industry for a year and then rejoin your studies if you want, but it's not something we offer as part of our degree program. We have a kind of 3-year and a 4-year taught neuroscience degree. However, both of these programs have a very extensive lab-based project within them. So not a year in industry, but certainly a lot of time in the lab. Sajuti says, what would be the profile of a successful applicant for UCL? Well, again, there's no perfect profile, right? Everyone's different. But as I said, the key things we're really looking for are, I guess, a passion for neuroscience and an understanding of neuroscience. So if you can talk about a specific area of neuroscience that you're interested in and demonstrate that you're passionate about it and that you've kind of gone beyond your standard studies because you're so passionate, then that's something that we appreciate. That's something that we look for. I hope that sufficiently answers your question. What percentage of international students are usually offered a place out of who applies? Goodness, I don't know. Ian, would you be able to answer that question?
I'm afraid I can't. I mean, we do have the figures, but I haven't reviewed them over the years to see what the breakdown is like. So can't help. Sorry.
What I could say is I think about half of the students who attend the course are international. So it's a mix of home students and international students. We get a huge number of applications. The majority are not successful, but it's a very competitive degree, and I don't know if more international students are successful than home students, or how it all breaks down. We'd need to go into the data and analyze it. So sorry, I can't properly answer that, but the best I can do, I'm afraid. Sira says, there are many specialized neuroscience-related master's programs in UCL, like drug discovery. So if one chooses to take the MSci route, is one able to diverge into one of these more specialized courses? Well, it would certainly be possible to complete the MSci and then do one of the postgraduate masters. Equally, it would be quite possible to take the BSc and then go on to one of these master's courses. I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what you mean by diverge into one of these more specialized courses, but certainly we have a lot of students going from our BSc and MSci programs onto other kind of specialist master's courses like the drug design and drug discovery masters. Zara says, in what ways are animals used during both the Neuroscience BSc and MSci? Well, we wouldn't use animals for lab practicals. We might use model systems, so insects, for example, or we might use animal tissues in some of our lab-based projects. In your final year project, you would have potentially the opportunity to work with animals, assuming you fulfilled the requirements. It's very, very tightly regulated. You have to, take appropriate ethics courses and animal handling courses and such forth before you are allowed to work with animals. But potentially in your final year project, you could undertake animal work if that's something that you would like to do. Sira again says, is work experience in non-neuroscience related fields valued by admissions officers equally to neuroscience related work experience? Well, we would value neuroscience relevant experience more, but any experience is welcome, and I guess an enthusiasm for lab work would be looked favorably upon. Ola says, if I were to retake English language and get a 6, would that be okay? Yes, I believe so. Pastor says, how is your yearly performance graded? Does exam-based performance bear more weight, or do essay research projects? This is a really good question. I'm glad you brought this up. To be honest, I probably should have talked about it earlier on, but it slipped my mind. So how you'll be assessed at the end of the year depends very much on the modules you select. So some modules will be very much exam focused. So you'll have a kind of proper exam at the end of the year, like what you'll have for your A levels. Other modules might be entirely coursework, so essay based or presentation based. In the final year, as I mentioned, most of your time will be spent in the lab, and the lab projects are typically assessed through a write-up of your lab project, and a write-up of your kind of research plan, and also a sort of viva, like a verbal exam where you talk about your project with a couple of experts. But yes, I mean it's quite dependent upon what you select, the modules you select, how you'll be graded. For the most part, there's a mix of assessment styles for each module. Maybe one or two of the students could chime in and add something on assessments. How do you feel you're normally assessed? Maybe the years would be best placed to answer that. Lani, how do
So,
your assessments use? I'll go on you, sir. Fine.
I'd say it's mostly exam based has been so far, except for the final year, which is like project based. But it does depend on the modules you do. Sometimes I avoided like coursework based modules because I felt exams were easier. But I know other people who would choose modules just because they were coursework based. And yeah, so you get that kind of freedom to choose. But first year, I think it was also mostly exam based from what I remember.
Great. I see you've actually already typed something in answer. Oh, sorry, Lani, go on.
Sir, yeah, I remember most of our exams are essay-based exam or short answer questions, apart from some in-course assessment, which are multiple choice questions or maths and coding.
So, Lise, apologies if I've pronounced that wrong, says, what are the A-level requirements in sense of APs? How many APs do applicants apply with? I'm not familiar with APs. Ian, have you heard of APs?
I think that might be, it looks like it might be a US qualification, so I'm going to cut and paste a response to that into the chat. But it's again, it's all any questions like that. I'll put the link in again to our course prospectus page, and then you select your country, and it will then tell you what kind of qualifications are required. But I'll drop a response into the chat about the APs. Do that now.
Thanks so much for that, and sorry for not knowing about your particular qualifications. Irina, is it preferable for applicants to focus their personal statement exclusively on neuroscience, or would a statement with a strong but broader relevance still be considered competitive? When I'm looking through personal statements, I like something with a neuroscience focus. Um, I, I guess I want to show, to see a particular passion and specificity of focus for neuroscience. It's a very intense degree, and I think it tends to be students who are really passionate who do the best. So that's really what I'm looking for. So Arash says, what do you think are the most valuable external things to do for your personal statement for neuroscience or pharmacology? Well, Arash, I think if you can get experience, that's wonderful and gives you something to talk about. If you can't, I think simply doing extra reading in the area of neuroscience and pharmacology to improve your understanding of the subject and to demonstrate that you're passionate about it is a great thing to do. And really anyone can go to the library and pick up a neuroscience textbook or even a pop neuroscience book if you just want to get a better feel for what the field is doing. Leah says, do you apply directly to an elective course from when we applied to UCL post high school? Can you change this later in the year? You select your electives and your optional modules in the summer before you study. The first year is pretty much constrained. So your first year is basically set out. You have to do the particular topics we prescribe. But for the second year, you have options. And for the third year, you have many options. So yeah, it's just a matter of kind of going through those options and working out what's right for you. Pardon me. Zara says, how useful is it for someone to go into a PhD if they intend to go into a career in neuroscience research? Well, Zara, it depends, I guess, how high you want to go. You can have a career in the lab without a PhD, but you'll be pretty much limited to a sort of research assistant position. If you wish to run your own lab, you'll need a PhD. So if you want to be kind of designing and leading your own research and a team of researchers, then you'll need a PhD for that. Samira says, do maths and chemistry and psychology as well. Could you say that doing psychology helped with the degree at all? And Yusa has given an answer to this. Thanks very much, Yusa. Cheers for diving in ahead. I think psychology is pretty useful in some ways, and potentially very useful if you choose to do some psychology-based optional modules, as many of our students do. I myself did an A-level in psychology, and I kind of found it quite useful in certain places during my neuroscience degree. So yeah, I think it can definitely come in handy. Sylvia says, oh, Ian, by the way, how are we doing for time? Are we strict to the hour, or can we spill over a
No,
little bit?
we can spill over.
Okay, good to know. Okay, Sylvia says, if you do not meet your requirements, does your offer immediately get taken away? I think it depends. Sometimes there's a small amount of flexibility. I think typically if you fail to meet your the required grades, then you won't be offered a place. But then on some occasions there may be some lenience in the admissions process. How strict we are is a little bit variable. But I think generally speaking, in order to be sure of a place, you need to meet your the requirements of the offer. Samira says, if you didn't take biology A level and took other sciences instead, would that put you at a significant? Oh goodness, I think have I. Is that the same again? Or just Natalie
Yeah.
wrote something there. Okay, I see.
I think it's just changed direction. So sometimes they shift in the order, but you've answered that one already.
Okay, it did. Okay. Yu Ying says, what kind of jobs are available after completing the degree? Oh, Ian, you've already kind of answered this very nicely, but I mean, you saw the graduate destinations. I guess we try to train as many PhD students as possible. I guess that's what we want to do. We want to kind of make great students who can further the field of neuroscience. But then a lot of our neuroscience students, understandably, at the end of their degrees, decide, actually, I'd quite like to make some money, and they go into something like consulting or finance or something like that. And people change over the course of their late teens and early 20s, and sometimes their ambitions change as well. And our degree really, I think, provides a lot of great options, no matter what career you might wish to go into. But yeah, ultimately, I guess we are trying to make top level neuroscience research scientists. Sarah said, would it be recommended to neuroscience applicants to apply during the early submission, i.e. when medicine applications are due? I don't think it matters too much. I think no matter when you apply, as long as it's before the deadline, we'll give your application a careful view. And if it's suitable, then you'll be offered a place. So I don't think it would make too much difference when you applied. Viola says, if you decide to take the bachelor course, does it become more difficult to go into the master's course at UCL Neuroscience? Natalia's kind of answered that, so I'll I mean the key thing is I think you need to get 60% in your third year, and you need to kind of you need to make sure you pick the literature project in the third year as well if you want to continue on to the master's degree. I think that those are the kind of key requirements. I think sometimes depending on your second year grade, you may be sort of steered in one direction or another. So if you're not doing especially well, you'll probably be encouraged to to finish at the BSc. So Awe says, I'm in year 13 and I got rejected from UCL Neuroscience, and it is because of the 5 I got in the English language. Right, okay. I am taking a gap year, so if I do an English examination that international students do, like IELTS, sorry, can I still apply with the English test as well as 5 in my GCSE? I think so. I mean, Ian, I don't know if you have any clarification. In theory, no. Is it a no?
I'm not sure, to be
Oh,
honest.
you're
I'm
not
not
sure.
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what, Awis? I would send me an email and I will double check it with the course director just to make sure. I think in theory, yes, because you've hit English language requirements. So I would imagine that that's okay. But send me an email anyway. I'll um I'll put my email address under your question. Oops, let's capitalize. Okay, so that's my email address. Email me your question and I'll chase it up and make sure I get you a kind of clear answer. Priscilla says doing psychology wasn't necessarily helpful with the neuroscience content. Okay, so you're kind of answering the like I see. Okay, you already kind of said that, so all good. Leah says to current 4th year UCL students, what are your plans after graduating this year? How did you find your research year? Has it shaped your interest in pursuing research further? This is great. So Yusa and Lani have both answered that. Do you want to give a brief summary of what you said, the two of you?
Yes, I accepted a PhD offer from Boston University in electrical engineering.
Congratulations.
Because during my research at UCL, I found I'm very interested in neurotechnology and the brain-computer interface, and I think it's good to take an engineering grade together with neuroscience. So I think my research year shaped my interest a lot, and I confirmed my passion for research, especially in neurodecoding and neuroengineering. So I would like to continue my study.
Very exciting stuff. Yusa?
Yeah, so first, congratulations, Lani. That's really good. I'm don't really have like any specific plans. I actually wasn't even sure I wanted to go into like science research. So this year, doing a research project really kind of shifted my perspective, and I'm more interested in staying in science and research as a career. So I don't have any specific plans. I kind of just want to stay and get more experience. It's been a really good learning opportunity, and I want to learn different and new lab skills before I rush into anything or like rush into a PhD.
Great, thank you. Chiamaka asks about the A levels that some of our students have undertook, and they gave nice answers there. I would clarify that we require chemistry, so we don't offer places to anyone who doesn't have a chemistry A level, a grade A, and we don't, and we need one of biology, chemistry, or physics. We don't need you know any of those. You can get by without any of those, but each of those will be beneficial to you, and we ask that you have at least one of them, which will kind of help you through your studies. Let me see. Poa, do you have any neuroscience podcast recommendations? I know that some of our students set up a neuroscience podcast. Does anyone know the link for that? Does anyone have a link for that? I don't have it to hand. And Priscilla gave a nice recommendation for a more kind of general one. Do you have a favorite neuroscience podcast? I have to say that I've not been overwhelmed by the available neuroscience podcasts. And when I listen to a podcast, I generally go for comedy. something to kind of I do neuroscience all day long, so I don't tend to listen to neuroscience podcasts when I'm walking my dogs. It's something that makes me laugh a bit instead. But do any of you have a kind of favorite neuroscience podcast? No, you're all too serious. You're all busy reading neuroscience papers. Ah, okay. That's a shame. Sorry, no recommendations on that front. Maybe I should look into it in case anyone else asks. Um, yeah, and pity we couldn't find that. I see if I can quickly Google the one that's done by our students. Uh, oh, well, we have Brain Stories, which is a UCL Neuroscience podcast. This isn't the one that I was talking about, but it's done by somebody within the department and also somebody who was a PhD peer of mine. So somebody I did my PhD at the same time as. So I think that's probably really good because I know both of those guys are really interesting, smart guys. So yeah, uh, Brain Stories might be worth checking out. Once personal statements and grades have been submitted for an application for the BSc Neuroscience course, would selected candidates appear for an interview as well? Thank you. This is from Jihan. No, we typically don't interview. We used to interview. We don't anymore. It's kind of largely based on the application and the grades. Maybe in the future we'll bring back interviews. We'll have to see. What is the value of choosing the Neuroscience MSci over the Neuroscience BSc? Well, obviously the MSci is a year longer, so you just have more opportunity to study more stuff in depth and to spend more time in the lab. So you have more experience, more training, and you're taught to a higher level. I guess fundamentally, if you want to apply for a PhD or another neuroscience related career, then an MSci is more attractive than a BSc. It's a higher level qualification. So those are the core differences, really. Just it's a difference in level, and Yasser and Lani have both kind of given answers to that question. Thanks very much. Akithma, and again, apologies if I've got the pronunciation wrong. What would the deferral process be? You mean if you were to apply and then ask for a year out? I think I guess just email the kind of course administrator and explain that you're going to take a year out. It's probably quite straightforward. Ian, I don't know if you know anything about this.
I don't, I'm afraid. But yeah, I mean, if they contact admissions, then admissions
Yeah.
will be able to. I mean, if you're made an offer, you can then ask to defer it for a year. I don't imagine that will be a problem, but confirm that with the
It's not.
admissions.
We've had many students do it, so I think it's probably very straightforward. I'm afraid I've not I've not done it myself, so I can't say. But yeah, I don't think it would be very complex. Just sort of simply contact the relevant administrators. Pastor says, apologies if this is an invasive question, but do you have an idea of what the incoming class size is for 2025? No, not. It's a perfectly fine question. I guess for 2025, we're sort of potentially looking at having around 80 students. So we are expanding the course a little bit from previous years. But there's a limit to how large we want it to become. So so we provide a very kind of in-depth and specialist level of training, and obviously with very large class sizes, this becomes impossible, right? We need to have a relatively small class size so that we can give everyone good lab placements and supervise lab projects and give them kind of adequate feedback. So we don't want to grow the class too massively, at least not in the near future. But yeah, I think we're sort of looking at around the 80 mark. Do you have any wider reading recommendations? Well, this seems to have been answered really nicely by a lot of our students. So Lani suggested a textbook, Principles of Neurobiology, and Priscilla suggested these lectures from Gresham College. Nice suggestion. And Aging in the Brain. Oh, and there's thanks for yeah, some nice suggestions there. As for me, I think any neuroscience textbook is great. Oh, somebody's mentioned Ramachandran. Yeah, that's a sort of interesting neuroscience book. I don't know. I'm kind of I don't read much pop neuroscience literature anymore. I mainly read like quite in-depth technical papers these days. So I've probably lost track of what the best kind of you know pop neuroscience books are. But those are probably really good recommendations. Piper says, I'm an international student. Is the tuition locked for all the 4 years of the MSci? I think so. Is that right? Is that right, Ian? That you kind of go in at a fixed price point when you pay tuition, and you don't get.
Yes, I'm also international and I'm taking
Okay.
4-year program. It's the same.
Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification. So yeah, I think it should be locked, as I understand it. But glad to have that confirmation. Um, thank you very much. What is the difference between this course and the human neuroscience course? Aha, Samira. So as I said before, we have a kind of very bottom-up approach. We're looking at cells, circuits, trying to work out how they compute information and how this gives rise to way more complex things like consciousness. Whereas I think psychology and the human neuroscience course will tend to look at consciousness, behavior, and perhaps sort of gross neural activity, which can be recorded from outside the skull with low resolution and sort of trying to infer what's going on underneath. So we take a bottom-up approach, trying to understand how the brain works like a computer. They tend to take more of a top-down approach, trying to kind of guess at how the brain works based on the outputs, in a sense. Irina, would you advise students who are interested in neuroscience to pursue a specialized undergraduate degree in neuroscience, or would broader degrees such as biochemistry or biomedical sciences be equally advantageous? No, I would certainly advise a specialist neuroscience degree. I think it will give you kind of much more useful, impactful specialist training than a broader degree would. That said, if you're unsure that you want to do neuroscience at this point, then you could do a degree in biomedical sciences, for example, and then specialize for your masters. So that option is certainly open to you. But if you're certain that you want to do neuroscience and you're passionate about it, then I think the degree we offer is pretty unbeatable in my view. Will you be sending the recorded video later? Ian, you've answered that. Thanks very much. So you're going to put it up on the website, okay? I hope I didn't bumble too much. Was it was it an okay record, Ian? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I mean, should just step in with regards to that, the international tuition fees. I'd need to check our policy on that. I mean, although
Okay.
it seems like from what we've heard, UCL is charging the same once you've started the course. You're charged the same rate each year. Universities can, at their discretion, increase rates. Sometimes it's just
I see.
in accordance with inflation. So it would depend on what the policy was. But it seems like at the moment, certainly for current students, it's staying the same each year. But I don't know that that's guaranteed. So that would be
Okay,
something
okay.
to
Thank you.
check with
Yeah.
admissions.
Thanks for that clarification. Okay, thanks very much. Why is psychology not considered one of the options for the application? Well, I think it's really if you look at the way our course is structured, a lot of the modules require quite a good knowledge of biology or maths or physics, right? So that there's a lot of quite technical stuff. And while you can learn a bit of physics or maths, you can also learn a bit of biology. It's tricky to learn all three at once, and if you don't have a decent grounding in at least one of them, I think you're probably really going to struggle with the degree. Psychology is a really nice A level, very interesting one, and it certainly has some content which is useful and relevant to our degree course. It won't, however, prepare you for some of the tougher training and modules which are on our degree. So that's why we don't consider it one of the necessary options. Are there entry requirements for 4 A levels? No, but obviously if you have 4 A levels, your application looks a bit better than someone who has 3 A levels. So it makes you more competitive, but we don't have a separate set of requirements. If you get your 3 A's with one in chemistry and one in one of the other core science subjects, and you have one other A level, you meet the requirements. If you have 2 other A levels, you meet them, and you have something else which makes you more appealing from an admissions perspective. Jihan says, are undergraduate students eligible for a scholarship? So I don't know. There are some scholarship options available. I don't really know what there is. Maybe Ian, you might be best placed to address
Yeah,
this.
I'll put a link to our funding page in the chat. There are potentially that we've got a scholarship finder on our funding pages. So if you have a look at that web page and use the scholarship finder, you'll be able to see what might be available.
Okay, thanks so much, Ian. Are there any additional rules for students that are starting the course at 17 years old? No, I think it's effectively the same. I think there are certain safeguarding rules, but they don't really affect you. That it's more just about how how the staff look after you, as it were. So from your perspective, I think it's about the same. Although Natalie has said specific student accommodation for anyone under 18. Okay, so that's really good to know. Thanks for that, Natalie. I'm glad I didn't know that, but yeah, you'll have, I guess, special accommodation options. Gail says, is an AS in further maths going to improve an applicant's chances, or would it not be relevant? Everything's relevant. So I mean, if you have an A level in maths and an AS in further maths, that's better than an A level in maths alone, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, that's certainly something we would look favorably upon in the admissions process. Yeah, very welcome. So I think I've finally got to the end of this long stream of chat questions. I don't know if there's anyone else who wants to ask something, feel free to shout out or type it in. And if no one does, then I guess we'll wrap up shortly. There doesn't seem to be much more, so I guess I'll just say thanks very much, and I hope this was informative and not too painful.